All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to our next edition of K-12 Politics and Tech. My name is Lindsey Dyer, and I'm with Digital Advisors. Today we have Tim Watrous, President of Digital Advisors, and Kevin Gordon, President of Capital Advisors, to walk us through the most relevant and important updates in the politics and tech realm affecting K-12. Welcome, Tim. Welcome, Kevin.
It's good to see you, Lindsay. Glad to
Thanks,
have
Lindsay. Thanks. Glad to be here.
All right, so kicking it off this week, Kevin, I'd love to turn it over to you to talk through the new information and guidance that's been put out around small group instruction.
Yeah. So again, sort of newer guidance because the old guidance wasn't that old, and they realized that there was kind of a glitch there. The guidance we had a 14:2 ratio, bringing small group instruction back for special ed, kids with learning loss, kids that just need extra support. So the idea, obviously, is to keep it in a pretty small cohort, although that cohort, which totaled 16, was bigger than I actually expected. But nonetheless, it was 14:2, and it created problems because, of course, if we're bringing back kids with disabilities and we have one-to-one aides, the idea of restricting it to two adults is a problem. So the new guidance came out clarifying this so that we can, in fact, have one-to-one aides, whatever. The whole group can't be bigger than 16, essentially. That's what the rule is. So you can have a smaller number of actual students, a larger number of adults, aides, and a teacher. Going to have a teacher in there, obviously. And then that'll work. So a little flexibility on the part of the California Department of Public Health, which we appreciate.
Yeah, absolutely. That's going to make a really meaningful impact. Tim, why don't you talk to us about what's happening with device shortages? This is something that you've spoken about in the past. What's happening today? What do K-12 leaders need to be thinking about when it comes to devices?
Thanks, Lindsay. Yeah, I think when we first started this, Kevin, we're back in March or April. We were we were talking about device shortages that actually persist and has gotten a bit worse because the supply chain issues due to the pandemic have increased. In other words, people aren't able to show up to work to make the devices. We're also seeing this sort of sustained battle between the U.S. and China, and basically the U.S. saying no Chinese parts allowed in devices, and the U.S. and so on. So this is having a massive ripple effect. Add to that the fact that families are coming back; they're buying devices for their kids so they can learn and work from home, and now we have massive gridlock on placing orders. We've seen Salt Lake City said they were 6,000 devices short to start the year. Texas just ordered 1 million devices, and they're in a 10-week backlog to receive those devices. So if your order is somewhere below 1 million devices, you're going to be behind Texas, and you're going to be further out than 10 weeks. So as we said early on in the broadcast, we say it again, even if you're a small district, buy the devices you need for the full year. Don't buy in small chunks. Think about the big picture. How much you're going to need this year to get by. Perhaps you can aggregate with your county office of ed, buying consortia, if you will, or group together with districts to try to get a larger order. Because the larger your order, the further ahead you'll be in line. Just want to make sure that everyone's aware that these supply chain challenges aren't going to go away anytime soon, and start to get creative, either reusing the devices you have, repurposing them, or aggregate larger orders so that you can move ahead in that line, because the line is tremendously long at this time.
That reminds me, Tib, and I know you know the folks, some of the top executives at Amazon, who we both have come to know that lead their K-12 work, struck up a really creative alliance with LA Unified, and now they're actually working with a number of other districts to deal with some of the supply chain issues, but also some really creative approaches on sort of web services, digital solutions. So, I mean, that's an option out there too. People need to reach out there. You guys can always get a hold of us and we can kind of link you up. But I think you're aware of some of the work that they've been doing, Tim, right?
Absolutely, yeah. AWS, Amazon Web Services. There's many ways to sort of approach repurposing an old device, but one of their tools in their arsenal is something called AppStream. We're going to stream an app. A device maybe doesn't have the power to use it, but AWS has that power to deliver an application to any device. So there's a lot of creative ways to solve it, and they are actually eager to do a lot of work in the K-12 market right now. So it's a good call out, Kevin. that there are partners you can lean on to help you with this trouble. But don't bet too heavily on getting a device anytime soon, I think, is the moral of that story. So thanks.
Got it.
Great points, guys. So Kevin, turning it back to you, talk to us about the new education advisors that the governor just recently appointed.
Yeah, a couple of very important appointments. Karen Staff Walters, who's sort of been the rock on education issues, spanning back to Governor Brown's tenure as governor, the entire 8 years. And then Governor Newsom, kept Karen very wisely, and she served this administration well. She moves on to an opportunity to lead the County Superintendents Association as their executive director, but that creates a hole, obviously, amongst the governor's advising staff. And he brought in Brooks Allen, who had actually played a role at the state board in the past, very well respected by the broader K-12 ed community. I think people are really excited about Brooks joining the state board as the executive director. He comes immediately from the Marin County Office of Education. But again, great appointment. And then added to that is Deborah Brown, who has a long resume of experience in K-12 education, with a long stint like I did at CSBA. And just an impressive background. She's been at the State Board of Education doing work there as well, but also did a lot of very important work over at Children Now. So she's got a real impressive resume. Governor, two very strong additions to his education team. So we're excited about that this week.
Fantastic. Thanks, Kevin. And there was another point that you wanted to make sure to share with the audience today around the interpretation of the CARES Act. Could you talk to us about that and the new federal judge who made the shift there?
Yeah, so this is a topic we've talked about before. Very briefly, I just wanted to kind of clean this up for everyone, because we already have sort of declared victory, but a third federal judge struck down Secretary DeVos's attempt to try to change the interpretation or the rules around equitable services. That is, the dollars that we have to share with private schools. We've had the tradition of doing that with Title I monies for private schools based on their proportion of kids in poverty. Her interpretation was going to have us have to share money with private schools based on their total enrollment, a very big difference. And then they came up with some sort of cute kind of guidelines to try to change it or make it more complicated, if you will, for, I think, the courts to rule. But the courts just looked at it and said, this is just not in compliance with actually the intent of the CARES Act, which was very clear and really mimicked what we had always had in Title I. So this third court decision kind of nailed it. And then the U.S. Department of Ed yesterday formally acknowledged that the secretary's sort of edicts along this no longer have force. So we go back to what normally should be the case, and that's pretty much shut down. Now, the only way she could actually pursue this, if she wanted to, was by getting Congress to change the law, and that's not going to happen, obviously, with a divided Congress. The House of Representatives, no way would go for this, certainly while they're under Democrat control. So that's the update.
Great. Thank you so much. All right, Tim, back to you. Give us some more updates around getting connected and staying connected. We know that leaders all across the state are grappling with connectivity, getting their students connected, and then most importantly, keeping them connected.
Thanks, Lindsey. Yeah, it's, in March, everyone was hit with this rapidly. They're just trying to connect to anyone they could as often as they could. You've had a little bit more time to prepare, and there's getting internet connections in homes is one of the top priorities for districts so that you can connect with your students. I'll just say that if the district doesn't own the connectivity, there is risk, and we're seeing this around the state. There's risk of data caps being met. So somebody might be streaming work applications because they're working from home. That could compete with the amount of data that's now available for learning. So when we start to think about the district-owned connectivity, that's a district-owned hotspot. Really making sure you're locking these things down and making it so you can only run the learning applications that need to be run on these devices or through those connections. Because if you don't, you may end up with some issues where you've met your data cap, you have multiple applications working at the same time. So therefore your Zoom, for example, might not work with your class. and you're going to run into some potential conflicts. So I would say the most, school districts are very good at provisioning devices and connectivity within buildings. When we get outside those buildings, we run into some challenges. So one is make sure you have an understanding of what can be used on those internet connections at home, how much data is available for your students. And then I would also say the devices that if you are giving your students devices, make sure they're locked down in such a way so they're really only there to serve those learning applications. Now, if you have the luxury of having unlimited data and wonderful connection speeds, and you decide you want to open that up to people so that they can do work from home, that's totally up to you. But if you really think about the amount of data a student's going to need in a month to get their learning done, that's basically a math calculation, and you need to start thinking that through, because what happens is you're going to start to get halfway through the month and not be able to connect to a certain number of your students, and that can be catastrophic. Especially as Kevin, as we've mentioned, you're going to have to start having to show some accountability for these connections over time. So, one of the things we try to do on this broadcast is save you from some of the gotchas that are lurking. And one of those is absenteeism, chronic absenteeism. Sometimes it may not be like a will thing, like I don't want to show up. It could simply be data and that math calculation not being correct. So, Lindsey, that's my point there. If I missed anything, please fill me in.
No, I think you summarized that perfectly. And that dovetails really nicely into cybersecurity considerations. Do you mind talking about that as it relates to connectivity?
Yeah, no problem. I know we may sound a little bit like a broken record on cybersecurity. Something we brought up many times in the broadcast. But as people are coming back to school and coming back to work, we're starting to see many, many more attacks and more networks go down. In fact, we're seeing entire countries go down. The country of New Zealand went down due to a ransomware attack. We mentioned University of Utah last week, I believe, but we're seeing Miami-Dade, Hartford, Houston, all being hit. In fact, in Miami-Dade, a 17-year-old was arrested, a student that had created that attack. So the bottom line here is it's not a matter of if one of these things is going to happen. It's more a matter of when. And in my opinion, this is like a modern day fire drill or earthquake drill. If you have a fire preparedness plan, you're ready for an emergency, you need a plan to be ready for a cyber attack, a ransomware attack, a denial of service attack, because you could lose connectivity for a day or a week, and that could be catastrophic for your teachers and your students. So if you don't have a plan yet, I would recommend, check out some sites like our friends at Site, who do a lot of work in this area. There's certainly a lot of wonderful resources there. We guide our clients on best practices and how to avoid and how to mitigate if something does happen. And then, as we referred to before, be careful if you do have some prescription from an insurance company on how to take care of the issue long term. Really make sure that that's a wise choice and a wise way to spend the dollars, because we've seen districts get prescribed fixes that are very, very expensive and hard or frankly impossible for school districts to maintain. So, trying to be brief, that's our major kind of keep your eye out. And if you don't have a plan, if you don't have a fire drill or a cyber attack drill ready, it's time to get one. So that's my update there, Lindsey.
Great. Thank you, Tim. And finally, Kevin, talk to us about your chat with California mayors and their renewed focus on helping schools.
Yeah. So last night we had a meeting with the mayors of the 13, I should say, largest cities in California. It was really impressive to see, the mayors of LA, San Francisco, Fresno, San Diego, Sacramento, and our friend Darrell Steinberg, the mayor of Sacramento, had invited me to participate and do a little briefing on education issues for all the rest of the mayors. And as some of you might remember, Darrell was the president pro tem of the state Senate. And has dealt with a lot of education issues over the years. But it was a great dialogue. And what I really sensed from these mayors is that, they get frustrated because everybody thinks they control everything, including schools. So their constituents are often approaching them about the challenges that are happening in local communities regarding education. And so one of the things that I really want to try to encourage districts is reach out to your mayors, work with your mayors, keep them informed. Because if you don't, on their own, they're going to end up coming up with ideas of how to get involved with you that may not be your idea of how you want them involved. And it's always great to have that collaboration. So really great meeting last night. They gave a lot of their time. It made me sympathize with the day of an average mayor these days, because we started at 8:45 p.m. And for them to be doing Zoom calls all day long and well into the evening just shows an incredible amount of dedication on their part. So it was fun to be part of. I think we're going to probably have more interaction with them, and I encourage you to as well. The other thing I wanted to mention, just a little shout out, Tim, while I've got the floor for a second, to SSDA, the Small School Districts Association, because one of the major issues we're obviously dealing with this week, and we will be for a number of weeks to come, is support for our school districts that are in fire-prone areas. We've got now fires active in multiple counties. So those county superintendents and all of you districts, superintendents, principals, staff that are dealing with some of these challenges will need some state assistance. We also got, a lot of accountability rules relative to how we're supposed to be operating our schools these days. We need to look at those accountability rules and how potentially some of these disasters might impinge on your ability to meet some of those objectives. So we'll be working with staff at the Capitol and SSDA, who's playing a leadership role in getting the attention of folks at CDE and others to focus on the unique problems that our districts are going to have. So we're on top of that as well.
Great. Thank you so much, Kevin. And Tim, did you also want to make an announcement related to SSDA?
Yeah, thanks, Lindsey. So, Kevin, thanks for bringing up Tim Taylor and SSDA. Actually, Tim's been getting a lot of calls from his districts with some of these connectivity issues that we're mentioning on this broadcast. And for that reason, we're going to work with SSDA to put together a video that SSDA will push out with some top recommendations on how to deal with, getting connected, staying connected, device shortages, best practice, especially in terms of what small school districts need to hear, because they have a different set of challenges than maybe some of the larger ones. And Lindsey, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that we're going to shoot to record and get that out next week, if that's right.
We'll record next week, and then we aim to push that out the following week, Wednesday, September 23rd.
Wonderful. Well, so, and it'll be we'll release it on this YouTube channel, I imagine, so folks will get the prompt to subscribe. And just a quick little shout out, making sure if you're a fan of this broadcast, we really appreciate you watching. Please share this with your friends. We'll have the editor put the little subscribe button right over my finger here, and you can subscribe to the channel. And then as we publish new videos each week, or we put out some special videos like the one Lindsey's referring to with SSDA, you'll get the notification on your phone. You won't have to go seek it out. So we appreciate your support in helping us market this. And as always, I would say, please submit your questions to Kevin or I, and we'll happily try to address those on upcoming broadcasts.
Great. Well, thank you, Tim. Thank you, Kevin, so much. And we will see you guys next week.
Great. Good.
Thanks, Lindsey.